What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today, making something that I didn't think that I'd be making in 2023, and it's a Paul Maurice video. I'm going to be sitting here talking about Paul Maurice today, not something that I foresaw a couple months ago. But here we are, in the Stanley Cup playoffs, Stanley Cup finals coming up, and Paul Maurice's Florida Panthers will be there. And now I've noticed there is a massive debate, on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you look, in the news about Paul Maurice. And, oh, maybe he wasn't the problem in Winnipeg. And then a lot of people saying, no, he definitely was the problem. He's just got, generational goaltending in front of him right now. Sergei Bobrovsky is having one of the most incredible playoff runs in recent memory from a goaltender. So, obviously a lot of people conflicted on how they feel about this, but I'm just going to give my 2 cents here. I've been wanting to do this for a little while now, but I think it's fitting with him going to the Cup Finals now. It's, time for me to make a video about it. My stance on the Paul Maurice, conundrum, if you will, is that, for one, I don't really care that he's in the finals. Fine. I like Paul as a person, and I really didn't like Paul as a coach. In 2014 to 2018, I think that he did a lot of great things for Winnipeg. He was obviously a big step above Claude Noel, even making the playoffs there in the 2014-15 season, the first time they'd ever been back since relocation, and they had a pretty nice playoff round, honestly. I mean, I know they got swept, but they really carried play for a lot of that series, and it's really a shame that they weren't even able to pull out one. But you know what? Nonetheless, he did a lot of good things for Winnipeg. Obviously, the 2018 year that everybody looks back on as the good old days, that was a lot of fun. Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler in their primes, those were some of their best years, right? And right after that year, things just kind of fell apart a little bit. The beginning of the 2019 season, 2018-2019, was pretty damn good. And as soon as they flipped that year to 2019, everything just kind of fell apart. And was this all on Paul Maurice? No, but he definitely was a big part to blame there. The guy could not put a lineup together to save his life, constantly outcoached every night, and, it just was not working here. And honestly, probably should have been fired after the 2019 year, after they got taken out by the St. Louis Blues there in the first round. That probably would have been a perfect time to let Paul go. Unfortunately, that did not happen. He got a contract extension, and after that, stuff just kind of started unraveling. They did make the, playoffs, I guess, the play-in round, but didn't really count. So Calgary beat them there in 4 games to move on. So the Jets lose there. They go into the bubble the next season once again, and they actually sweep the Edmonton Oilers, which is kind of funny. The North Division was so cracked out that year, and, obviously to be swept in the second round by the Montreal Canadiens. After that, Paul's final year here in Winnipeg, he would go play a couple months there with the team, and then he would ultimately step down. So that's the tenure of Paul Maurice after the 2018 season, and it's not a great one, and he really didn't do a lot here in Winnipeg, and if he didn't step down, I would have hoped that he was fired and let go, along with the rest of the coaching staff that offseason. But to wrap up this section here about his time in Winnipeg, between 2014 and 2018, I think that he was a pretty good coach, didn't do a lot of things that I really hated, but in the back half of his coaching tenure here in Winnipeg, I just don't think that he was that great of a coach. I don't think that he was really what the Jets needed, and, there was just so much going on, he was not the man to fix it either. But now we look at him as the head coach of the Florida Panthers now, just a year after stepping down from the Winnipeg Jets, and he has taken his team to the playoffs. They just snuck in the East, and I really wasn't too high on them. I thought, Boston's probably going to beat them in 5 or 6. I don't see this series, really going anywhere. And for the majority of the regular season, the Panthers were very inconsistent, just not very good. And they reminded me a lot of the Winnipeg Jets, just a very inconsistent team. The fans of the Florida Panthers really didn't seem to love Paul and, what the coaching staff was doing. But it really helps when you get into the playoffs and then your goaltender just starts playing lights out like Sergei Bobrovsky has been doing. He's been the story of the playoffs to this point. Now, he's been playing fantastic in the first 15 games here of the playoffs, obviously going to the Stanley Cup final here for Florida. We'll see, how they do against whatever opponent they play, whether that's Dallas or Vegas. But I do think that it's really weird that we're not looking at the first 82 games of the year, where they were very up and down, just like how the Jets were in the final, 3 years of the Paul Maurice tenure, and not the 15 games where they're getting absolutely incredible goaltending from Sergei Bobrovsky. He's been a big part of why the Panthers are so successful. They have Matthew Tkachuk playing at an all-world level right now. He might be, the most electrifying player in the league right now. He might be one of the most dominant. If you do a fantasy draft right now, I think he goes top 5. I think he has to. That guy's just come up clutch, playoff performer. He's making me a fan, and I have famously hated Matthew Tkachuk as a Jets fan for quite a while now. So very interesting there, but that's just my thoughts on it. I think it's laughable to judge Paul Maurice off of a 15-game skid where he's gotten absolutely elite goaltending and legendary goaltending, to be honest, from Sergei Bobrovsky, who has really led the way for Florida here in the playoffs. And I get the argument about, the flip side as we look at the Winnipeg Jets, and they have the same results with Rick Bowness. The players were buying into Rick Bowness's system in the first half of the year, and then Rick Bowness started to call them out, and then they didn't like it, right? We saw that at the end of the season. That was a big focus there, where all the players kind of got mad at Rick for, voicing his frustrations after the playoff game, where he said the effort was disgusting and everything like that. And honestly, I 100% back Rick Bowness here. Those guys needed to be called out, and it was really, really rough watching the players just kind of bag him that day. I didn't understand that at all. I thought that was really spineless of really every one of them. Like, have some accountability. You were very disappointing in the playoffs this season. You didn't look like you cared for a lot of it, and it was embarrassing. I thought, maybe some guys are injured, maybe there were some big injuries, maybe guys were playing through broken ribs, but that really just was not the case. These guys were healthy, they just were not giving 110%. So, the way I look at this is, look, Paul Maurice was a problem here in Winnipeg. So were the players. There's blame to be spread around everywhere there. The coaching staff, management, ownership, everywhere on the Jets side of things. Paul Maurice has entered a really good situation here in Florida where, it was pretty up and down in the regular season, but, Sergei Bobrovsky coming up clutch and, Carter Verhaeghe, Matthew Tkachuk, Sam Bennett, guys coming up in the big time moments under the lights, and it's just something that he couldn't get the Jets to do. That's something that, the Jets still don't do, but under Paul Maurice, whether it's him, whether it's just the players, they are doing a fantastic job right now in the playoffs, and they're a lot of fun to watch. But that's just my thoughts on it, really. That's just the way I see it. I don't think that this is worth arguing about, the Jets shouldn't have let Paul Maurice go, because, it was time. It was time to let Paul go. If Paul Maurice was still the head coach here, I think that I'd be on my head spinning, and I think that a lot of other people would be too. It's just not a good situation, and I'm happy that that era is over. And I wish Paul the best of luck. I don't have any ill will against Paul Maurice. He did a lot of things that I really didn't like, but he's not the head coach of the Winnipeg Jets anymore. I don't have to worry about it. I'm more worried about the future of this team and, kind of how the outlook in the next 4 or 5 years are going to be. I'm not really looking at Paul Maurice anymore. I think it's time to drop it. If the guy wins a cup, good for him. Guy deserves it. Fine. He got to that point. Give him the cup, give him his ring. Good for Paul. If he doesn't, I don't really care. I'm indifferent in this situation. I would like to see him win, to be totally honest with you, but if not, whatever. I don't care. But that's just my thoughts. I wanted to give my 2 cents. I saw a lot of people arguing about it on Twitter, and I don't know. It's just been funny to me. I just don't get why it's such a hot topic right now. It is what it is. Let's move on. See you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.